We are back with Grand Tactician Civil War Union Campaign, and where we had left off in the last episode is our primary army in the east, the Army of Northeastern Virginia, had just been engaged by the Confederate Army of the Potomac, supported by the Confederate Army of the Shenandoah. And we had the engagement screen, and I saved the game and cut off the episode right there with the intention of continuing in this episode. As I've loaded the game back in, there's a couple of things which I don't quite know how to understand. The first is, in secondary to this other situation, when Patterson's army crossed the Potomac up here and moved into the lower Shenandoah, there was a supply depot here, the Harper's Ferry Armory, that apparently is no longer there. Harper's Ferry itself is. That supply depot is not. I do not remember that burning or anything like that, so I don't quite know how to explain that. It is creating a little bit of a supply problem for Patterson, who is kind of doing okay on the amount of supplies he has on hand, but he's consuming more than he is getting. And I've got supply lines shown, and I can't see where he's getting supply from. That may just be maybe just time needs to move a little bit for that to show up. But in any case, it looks like I'm missing a supply depot here, which is a little bit of a problem. The second is, as I log back into the game, I thought I would log back in and we would still have that engagement screen or set of choices menu on whether we intended to withdraw or fight tactically or auto-resolve, and that is not here. There is, however, I'm trying to turn the camera around so you can see a little bit better. There is, however, a second battle monument. We've got the Battle of Culpepper Courthouse from July 12th. That did occur, a battle which we won. And then there's now a separate Battle of Culpepper Courthouse, August 5th, reflecting Longstreet versus McDowell as if the battle already occurred, and it has a U.S. flag, a federal flag, flying above that monument, implying nope, never mind. I think that flag is associated with our army, not with the monument. In any case, as soon as I'm not 100% sure this battle is going to occur. When I hit when I unpause time, it may just go straight into the battle. That's probably I feel like that's what's going to happen. Or it might not. Longstreet is sitting here encamped. And the center of his encampment icon is actually just outside our combat radius. And I had been, since the last episode, I've been kind of going back and forth on what to do here. We have gotten 2 pretty good early victories, which has helped Union morale, hurt Confederate morale, gained our military experience. I don't want to turn around and hand that right back to the Confederates. And the factors which allowed the wins in those battles, the tables have turned. We had a numerical superiority, and we were able to catch each of these two armies separately where they could not support one another. Well, since then, due to expiring enlistments, the strength of our army has dropped by about 10,000 troops. Meanwhile, the Confederate armies have increased individually in strength, and they are also now supporting each other. We saw that at the end of the last episode, if the Army of the Potomac engages, that the Army of the Shenandoah is within reinforcement range and can enter the battle fairly quickly, 9 hours, which is enough to come in on the first day, or at the very least come in on the morning of the second day, which often turns out to be the major day of the engagement. In addition to that, we still have some, it's not visible here, I don't think. Yeah, it doesn't show you morale in this view, which is really kind of silly, but it doesn't. But in the engagement screen, we saw that we still had several units that were low morale because of events in the preceding battles. So we have less men, at least some of whom are low morale and might break on initial contact. And once units start breaking, there's a chain reaction effect, right? The presence of a routed unit, a routed friendly unit nearby, decreases morale of the unbroken units, driving them closer to routing themselves. So once a couple of brigades start routing, there tends to be a cascading effect. So we're kind of, I feel like I'm kind of in a situation where the Army of Northeastern Virginia, despite having won two good victories very recently, has lost a bunch of its troops due to expired enlistments and is not the same force that won those battles. And I would really prefer not to fight a battle here. What I should have done, because I had already kind of made that decision that I wasn't going to push further, I just did not expect these Confederate forces to reconstitute so quickly and come back on the attack. And then I just kind of watched as the Army of the Potomac came right back across the river toward me and just watched it happen without doing anything. But what I should have done at that point was to shift this army from offensive into a defensive mode, which makes them entrench. And then what might have happened is kind of a siege occurs here, which would also have been, I still would have had the same problems, but that might have allowed time to bring Department of Pennsylvania up and add another 10,000 men to our side. In any case, this army is basically the nucleus around which we need to build a larger army using the available manpower, which will be unlocked by completing research on this Militia Act 3. So as I unpause time, I feel like all McClellan-y and cautious and everything, but I'm going to try to pull this army back. And if the if the battle is forced by the Army of the Potomac, I am going to attempt to withdraw. I know some people aren't going to like that. If I was watching, I probably wouldn't like it. I'd much rather see a big bloody fight. But I think it's the smarter campaign move, and that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, it was just waiting for time to unpause, and we're right back where we were. So I do not. So if I auto resolve, I am sure we're going to get wrecked. If I play it out, I don't know. It's kind of. I don't have a good feeling about it. Also worth noting, we've lost some of our guns. I don't exactly know how. None of our artillery units were significantly damaged in the previous battles, but I know we had more than 40 guns before. I think that's back down to if you lose artillerymen, you can't fully man your guns. So that's another factor that arose from the expired enlistments. All right, I'm going to see if we can withdraw in good order. It may completely backfire. It may turn into a rout anyway. And then there's the additional question of, let's say we do successfully withdraw up to around Alexandria or something. Well, what prevents the Army of the Potomac from just keep on coming, and we have the same situation right up by Washington? So far, he's had a routed unit. We have not. Got a rearguard action going on here, suffering some casualties. And he might force a battle anyway. It's pretty interesting he's in contact, yet he's still using the railroad. And he's using the railroad to keep up with me, preventing disengagement. That's pretty smart. I don't know how realistic that is. Ideally, in the rearguard action, hopefully we'd be trying to tear up some track if he's doing this. Oh, he's chasing me all the way back up to Manassas. And you can see already, because I'm retreating, the supply depot I was building doesn't immediately go away, but it starts to deteriorate, and it will go all the way back down. So you lose progress, and if I ever get back in time, it'll require more work to complete the supply depot. And it's happening slower, but the same thing is happening with this fort as well. Question is, we may pull back far enough where the Army of the Shenandoah is no longer in engagement range. That's a different ball of wax. Well, good Lord, now he's coming up behind me, and he's going to get to Manassas before I do. While they're in this rearguard action, withdrawing or retreat, if I'd chosen that, you can't control where they go. Basically, McDowell is maneuvering to disengage on his own. I can't influence the direction he goes. I don't think. But now he's kind of moving off in a direction where the rail line doesn't facilitate pursuit. We haven't had any units route yet. Does it at least show where he's going? No, not really. He's drawing supply from the Alexandria port now. Don't have visibility on the Army of the Shenandoah now. Probably moving up this rail line. These are still showing as Union controlled, however I'm sure they're turning back over. Is he going to the river? Okay, Army of Northeastern Virginia has slipped away and now pulling back further. But the Army of the Potomac is coming up the railroad. Is he going to Alexandria or is he going to Winchester? He's going to Winchester. Deteriorating supply situation and even fewer men than McDowell. Going to pull him back across the river. Use the railroad if you can. Put McDowell in defensive mode. Go park him over here in front of Alexandria. Yep, Longstreet's changing his mind again. Looks like he's kind of wavering on which way to go. Big question is, where is the army of the Shenandoah? If I were confident that I could engage this army unsupported, that would change things a lot. Now he uses the railroad just to get across the river. Nope, there comes the army of the Shenandoah. Reinforcement range. I'm going to pull Patterson back to here. I got a funny feeling I might need him. I'm going to pull McDowell back across the river into the capital. Some early successes at the beginning of the war, but it's kind of all getting wiped out now. Longstreet and Johnson have got the advantage in men and guns. The tables have turned for the moment. For the moment. Meanwhile, still got a little ways to go in this fort at Grafton. I'm gonna go ahead and take these. Well, it was 1,000. Now it's 400 men in the West Virginia militia. What's McClellan down to? He's down to 7,000. Oh, goodness me. I'm going to go ahead and join these two, and I'm not going to do it by moving this unit independently over. Basically, I'm going to disband what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this brigade to this army, and it will happen kind of administratively. It'll take some time. Pause for that. Okay, and the way that that happens is transfer. Cut the garrisons out. So we're going to take Duval's West Virginia Brigade of Volunteers and transfer them to McClellan's Army of the Kanawha. It'll get there in 2 days, but it will not be on the map. And the West Virginia militia will cease to exist as an independent force in the field. Like so. Let's see how our army here is doing. Grant actually has some men now. He's got most of his men. 24,000 out of a total of 27. Just one more brigade is still 3 days out. And once he gets up into at least yellow readiness, let's see here. It's got a lot of ground to cover out here. Kind of the biggest priority is making sure that the Rebs don't come up and take Louisville, which is by far the most important city in the immediate area. It's a lot bigger than Evansville or Nashville for that matter. At low readiness, he can still move within friendly territory. I'm just going to start moving Grant over toward Louisville. And it'll take 3.5 hours for the orders to get from Washington to Evansville via the telegraph lines, and then preparing the army to move. Meanwhile, these river squadrons we have over here are pretty much up to snuff now. Let's order River Squadron 2. Come to here. River Squadron 3 right about here. And Riveron 1 down to about here. Okay, Army of the Missouri has gotten to St. Louis, the outskirts of St. Louis. He's down to 4,000 men. Drawing supply from this supply depot and from Franklin. It's kind of odd in the supply network. These smaller towns provide supply, but for some reason the cities or the towns big enough to actually have a number associated with them, these are objectives. For some reason they don't provide supply, which is weird. Some of the entities near them, like ports and ferries and stuff like that. They do, or can. But those cities themselves do not, which I think is kind of odd. Basically, the larger towns, these are objectives. They have, if they have a number, they're an objective, and the number is kind of indicative of their size and importance. Capturing these is what drives morale, national morale, up and down. St. Louis is an 8, so we don't want to lose this. Okay, I think let's get Lion building fort. Let's cover this side first. Put a fort right here, and that'll cover both the railroad and the southern road coming up. When this is done, we'll build another fort up here on the north side. I've never tried before. I wonder if it's possible to build 2 forts simultaneously. It is, apparently. I did not know that. Huh. I bet they build slower, though. Well, not really. Fort typically takes I usually see like 49 days, so if it does take longer, it's only a day or two. That's worth doing. All right, let's go back to monitoring the east. I think they're going to go back up there and retake Winchester. Okay, manpower situation. We've got a total of 71,000 men in the field, compared to so we've got more men in the field than the Confederacy does, about 14,000 more. However, I think that is entirely explained by the existence of the Army of the Kanawha, and we've got 24,000 in the field in the new Army of the Ohio. And there probably is not, we know that there's this Polk's command down here, which is pretty small. So we outnumber them over here for now, but this army is not quite ready to start acting offensively. So all of our strength that we can't quite bring to bear is in the west. It does call into question, just how strong the Confederates are over here. Probably not that much. But if you take into account the size of Grant's army, yeah, we are outnumbered over here in the Virginia theater. Something's got to be done about that. Yeah, a lot of these brigades are less than half what they were before, or about half. And just slowly waiting for volunteers to trickle in. I don't know if that's the best. I kind of feel like I need to create some more units. Patterson. Yeah, he's not doing too hot. Now, we're working on the Militia 3, which gives us 24-month volunteers. We did start with 12-month. So the new guys coming in are 1-year troops. So the troops we do have are going to be around for 11 months. And as more volunteers come in to replenish these units, they are longer term as well. So the question is, do I just let that replenishment continue, or do I build some more units? I know that eventually I am going to build an army of multiple corps over here. The Army of Northeastern Virginia will eventually be one of those corps. The Department of Pennsylvania will eventually be one of those corps. I'm going to go ahead and start the nucleus of another corps. It's not going to be real big to start with. I don't really have the men to build a huge whole nother corps here, or eventual corps. But I'm going to start one. Recruit new army in Maryland under Fremont. I don't know about that. I don't know. He's not terrible, but we've got better options. No, let me think about that. I think I'm going to go with, he's right around in here somewhere. I don't know if he's what rank he is at this point. There he is. I like Hooker. I mean, he's got great stats. I believe he would be a fine choice for our third fighting force in the East. Hooker was kind of, historically, he was kind of a little bit, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. His biggest, he was a guy who kind of, he was a good general. basically throughout the war, but hit kind of the pinnacle. His biggest, most high vis operation was he was in command of the Army of the Potomac for a few months in 1863, and he didn't do well. The degree to which it was his fault he didn't do well is debatable. One can seek to explain why that happened, and it kind of turns into that, you kind of cross that gray line of excuse making. But without retelling the whole thing, basically in command of the Army of the Potomac, he moved south. The Battle of Chancellorsville ensued, and right at kind of a critical stage of that battle and up to that point, up to that point in the middle of the Battle of Chancellorsville, the Army of the Potomac was doing very well. They had caught Lee flat-footed. He didn't have one of his corps on hand, and was grossly outnumbered. And they had really pulled a fast one, and it certainly looked like they were going to wreck the Army of Northern Virginia. Hooker's headquarters came under artillery fire, and he was not hit, but a cannonball smashed into, he was standing on the, if I understand correctly, if I remember correctly, I'm not looking it up, but he was standing on the porch or right next to the building in which his headquarters was, and a cannonball smashed into the building, smashed into the porch, narrowly missing him. But he just got his bell rung. In a later era, I think it would have been pretty clear that he had suffered a serious concussion. So even though he wasn't visibly wounded, he was just spaced out. He was out of it. And what should have happened was that command of the Army should have transferred to one of his subordinates, Reynolds or Meade or somebody. But he wasn't visibly wounded. He was in no condition to recognize himself that he needed to transfer command. And none of his senior commanders nor his staff kind of forced the issue either. So he remained in command and was in no condition to exercise command because he was just spaced out. Like whereupon a series of very poor decisions were made, or non-decisions when decisions should have been made. And the Army of the Potomac then suffered a flank attack, which was a successful surprise flank attack by Jackson's Corps, which wrecked a couple of the Union corps on their far right. And Hooker ordered a retreat, which was very uncharacteristic of him. And his corps commanders said okay, and the Army retreated in a situation where it probably didn't need to. After that, basically, he fell out of good graces with the president and with Halleck. Was not immediately relieved, but he was on his way to being relieved. And not long afterward, Meade took command of the Army just before Gettysburg. So basically, no, he did not perform well there, although there were extenuating circumstances. And in hindsight, in 2020, the armchair general from decades, over a century later, can see why that happened. Other than that, though, Hooker did pretty well throughout the war. He was a very good division commander and corps commander. His nickname was Fighting Joe, and it was well earned. And even after that less than stellar performance in command of the Army of the Potomac, he went on and continued to be a very effective corps commander in the West under Sherman. So there's a little bit of what if there. what if that artillery round doesn't give Hooker a concussion in the middle of that battle? Could have been very different. It's easy to play the what if game, but anyway, I think Hooker's a pretty good choice, and he's going to be a corps commander. In the, oh look, it's calling it the Army of the Potomac. We're not quite ready for that. We're forming it in Maryland. It will eventually be like 3rd Corps or something, but for now I'm just going to call it the Army of the Severn, which is the river that runs by Annapolis, where the Naval Academy is, in Maryland. And we're going to start them off and just start building. We'll give them 1 division to start. Who's this guy? Jacob Cox. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'd be okay with this guy for a brigade. For a division, though, let's try somebody else. Nope. 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 It's not terrible. No fame, but, you know, 6 pips. 6 stars. Now this guy's interesting. Not for a field command, but 3 pips in administration. Meigs would be pretty good for maybe like kind of like I'm doing with McClellan, just going around building forts for the moment. Or maybe kind of going around the fringes, taking out isolated forts. Meigs would be pretty good for that. I'm going to kind of hold him and see if a role like that comes up for him. Lew Wallace. He looks pretty good. I think he's going to be in command of this division. Let's go ahead and plop on 3 full-size infantry brigades. That's about 9,000 men out of our available 37. Oh, but I can't do 3. And the reason for that is a volunteer unit comes from 1 state. It's not just as simple as you've got 37,000 men available. I mean, that's broken up into 20-something states. And so a state has to have 3,000 soldiers on its own to be able to field a new brigade of volunteers. Later, when the draft is implemented, that'll be different. You can mix and match the draftees, I think, but not volunteers. So I can only do 1 brigade here. Oops, I mistyped this. There we go. Okay, but we can also start getting some artillery together. I think this guy's okay to command some artillery. Start getting some more batteries together. where are they? Army of the... Yeah, Army of the Severn's up here. Right now it's just basically a recruiting center. It's not really a force. Let's go put them in Baltimore. If y'all noticed up in the corner of the screen, this ironworks was just building and just completed building. That had nothing to do with my action. That just happened spontaneously. And it's wide open to Confederate capture. Awesome. Kind of like to get this... I hope McClellan's able to get this fort completed and kind of open up his maneuverability. I hope he's able to get this fort completed before getting attacked. And we can no longer see Longstreet. At some point, once the manpower opens up a little bit, we need to start getting some cavalry recruited as well. Speed up time a little bit, move things along. How's McDowell's strength doing? About the same. So McDowell and Patterson are within reinforcement range, so we've got about 27,000 men here. Let's see how we're doing out west. Forts are building along. Small. Well, his 4th Brigade's pretty big. Grant's moving toward Louisville. Oh. Here's a new sighting of Polk's command moving up the road toward Lexington. Well, we thought. I don't see him now. Let me get the army that he doesn't have the readiness condition to go into scouting mode, apparently. Does McClellan have his additional brigade now? He does. 7,700 men. Keep building that fort. See this little bar above, yeah. Army of the Potomac has gotten up here, and they are now recapturing Winchester. Which means it is possible. Can I sneak across the river and attack the Army of the Shenandoah without the Army of the Potomac supporting? Let's get Patterson across the river. Yep, Johnston's moving now. Interestingly, they don't seem to be, I mean, there's not really a supply depot there. So I'm not sure it's raidable. I don't even know if that is visible to the Confederate side, and if they have an option to complete it for their own use. I don't know. Okay. So we've gotten our Militia 3 2-year contracts, further enlistment, states forming new regiments. So here there will be a little bit of a delay, but our available manpower should kick up a lot to start to form some new units. In the meantime, I think this will do what we need for now. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do legal blockade. Because right now the trade warfare is only very slightly in our favor. We need to strengthen the blockade. And this will help do that. Once this is done, probably kick back to maybe military 2. Probably military 2, I think. And by that time, I think we're going to need to start worrying about our credit rating and do government funding one. Okay, Winchester has fallen back to Confederacy. And the Army of the Shenandoah is going over there, at least for the moment. That volunteer available pool is not immediately kicking back. It may need to roll over to September before we see any substantial increase. Where's Grant? Still on his way to Louisville. And our river squadrons have gotten close enough that we can now see that there are, in fact, these forts here. Donaldson, Henry, and Hyman. There's nothing that these river squadrons can do against these forts. If I moved River on 2 right up into range of Fort Donaldson, it would get schwacked hard. It's just the way it is. Here's a new Confederate force, the Army of the Northwest, 1,300 men. Army of the Potomac is visible again. Where exactly is it? I think that's an estimated position. August 14th, last location noted yesterday. Patterson's across the river. Let's go ahead and move McDowell up across the river back into Alexandria. I want to make sure that the Rebs see both forces in the fog of war. Their presence, even just sitting right here, may forestall them from moving over into West Virginia. Oh my goodness. Okay. Looks like the Army of the Northwest, 1,300 men, they've moved up awful close to McClellan. Would they be doing that? It smells like the Army of the Potomac is coming west. I don't understand how Fredericksburg is still considered Union territory. That doesn't make sense. I think maybe because they're within the influence of Alexandria and there's not a Confederate force in the immediate area to flip that. Whereas Catherine Furnace maybe is under the influence of Richmond, but Fredericksburg and this bridge are kind of part of the territory of Alexandria, I guess. That's the only way I can explain that. Whereas Culpepper Court keeps getting the battle icon. Whereas Culpepper Courthouse may be normally under the influence of Alexandria, but the Army of the Shenandoah somewhere around here is close enough to influence that. Move up closer to Manassas Junction, see if I can't get eyes on one of these Confederate armies. I'm going to go ahead and precipitate an engagement here. Force the Army of the Northwest back south. I do not expect this army to fight. It will probably just retreat back on its supply depot. Well, apparently that's Beauregard. It says Beauregard withdrawing, Army of the Northwest. And it's withdrawing toward Union territory. That's annoying. Toward Marietta. It's not great. What's Grant doing? Grant is in position. He's still orange readiness. Louisville's Union territory, though. I think he can come across the river. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't just let this guy march into Ohio. Move McDowell back down to Culpepper. And advance Patterson to Manassas. Supporting range. These two armies together is almost 29,000 men. I think I'm willing to fight a battle with that, especially if it's defensively. I enabled rail movement for McClellan here, Army of the Commonwealth. Sometimes they use the rails when you tell them to, sometimes they don't. It's hard to tell what makes the AI use it or not. Polk's bypassing Louisville and coming up here potentially toward Covington. I'm going to take River Squadron 3. And I'm going to move them up to about here. Mainly just for eyes. Get some better visibility on what the heck Polk is doing. Patterson arrived, McDowell arrived, McClellan arrived. Does McClellan have eyes on? Where did that army pop off to? Well, they didn't go into Marietta. It must have just come on down through these woods. I'm going to tell McClellan to go back to his fort. Complete that. And McDowell has started again on the supply depot and fort. They're building again. told Patterson to build a fort right about here. It's not what I meant. One on that side, cover these roads and railroad here on the outskirts of Alexandria. Another one here. Cover these roads coming up from Fredericksburg. I'm gonna let Grant kind of increase his readiness a little bit. Once he gets up into the mid-yellow or so, I'll send him over here chasing toward Polk. I mean, just in terms of his strength versus Polk's, yeah, he could go now. But, you know, I don't want him to get, as you march, you lose readiness. It slowly degrades. Kind of need him ready for some maneuvering. Okay, Polk is probably here because there's a supply depot being built near Maysville. And this telegraph station is actually considered Confederate control. These Confederate forces are being a little bit of a pain in the butt, which okay. I thought there would be that page that kind of showed the patch. It's not available in the campaign, but improved AI campaign behavior, I think was one of the patch notes for 1.05, and yeah, I can see that. Oh, nice. We're up to 86% blockade effectiveness in Virginia. That's good. And that's what these plumes of smoke are. These ports that are being blockaded. Presumably, I guess, from bombardment. Yeah, Wilmington's a little bit higher. And that may be because, yeah, we're getting more ships on station now. They've come up in readiness, and they've sailed out to join their squadrons. And the legal blockade policy will increase this trade war budget, this subsidy, from 250K to 500K, I believe, which will further increase the effectiveness of the blockade. In any case, I haven't exactly been keeping watch on the clock, but I feel like we're probably pretty close to an hour. A little bit of a slower episode, kind of like the last one, just kind of the chess maneuvers continue, and we'll continue in the next episode. Thank you for watching.